Hey you guys, thank you for joining me on a new episode of Food and a Single Guy. I'm AMARU. Now on this episode of Food and a Single Guy, I'm gonna cook something that is so traditional to my country. It is such a festive dish and it's called pom. Now the roots of this dish can be traced back all the way to Israel. Yes, Israel. But pom has become a staple dish in the black cuisine in my country, and it's served at special occasions such as birthdays and graduations, and even at Christmas. Now before we get to the recipe, let me fill you in on a couple of things. You see, my country has a very diverse population. It is actually a melting pot of different people with different ethnic backgrounds. When the first Jewish people arrived in my country back in 1630, they quickly made the country their own. And to this day, the Jewish influences are still very noticeable in my country, given the amount of Jewish-owned businesses, the Nef Shalom synagogue in my country's capital, as well as 2 Jewish cemeteries which are no longer in service, by the way. I'll post a couple of links in the video description box below this video, so you can go ahead and do your own research and educate yourself about my country and about the origins of this dish. The main ingredient for pom is what we call pom tayer, which is a starchy tuber that grows above ground, which is then peeled and grated to a pulp. And of course, I'll post the link to this plant below for your information. Now, what I'm also going to post below are the ingredients that we need to make this very festive dish. Now let's get to it. Now, since I live in Europe, it is practically impossible to come by fresh pom tayer, so these frozen ones will do just fine. And as you can see in this picture, these babies are frozen solid. The best thing to do is to remove them from the plastic bag and then put them in a large bowl to thaw, which is what I forgot to do, as you can see, and therefore I wasted about, 4 tablespoons of the tayer. Anyway, now since this is an oven dish, you want to make sure that not only the filling is seasoned well, but the tayer also. We do that with some salt, pepper, nutmeg, onions, parsley, some brown sugar, and some fruit juices. Now, the sugar will bring out the flavor of the tayer, but don't go crazy with it, because nothing ruins this dish faster than an overkill of sugar. Now, traditionally, we also use the juice of oranges, but according to my mother's recipe, mixing orange juice with lemon juice and pineapple juice adds a very delicious and subtle flavor to the tayer. So here we go. Something else that we use to season the tayer with is the juice of the meat, which we're gonna get to in a minute. Now mind you, the consistency of the tayer should not be too soggy. If the mixture is too soggy, it will come out of the oven looking messy, and that is not what you want. You should be able to cut it into nice pieces, much like you would lasagna, just to give you an impression. Next, we're gonna prepare our meat filling. Traditionally, we use salted beef and boned chicken, but since this was an order placed by one of my clients and he wanted salted beef and boneless chicken, we went with boneless chicken instead. Now, the first thing you need to do, because it's taking a lot of time, you need to tenderize the salted beef and chop it into nice little cubes. Then cut the boneless chicken into nice little cubes like so, and season with some salt, pepper, nutmeg, chicken powder, and some lemon juice, and allow to marinate in the fridge for at least half an hour to an hour. The next step is to heat some oil in a large pan and saute the tomatoes first for about 5 minutes. Now add the chicken stock cubes and simmer for about 2 minutes before adding the onions or shallots. Give it a good stir before adding the parsley, the ketchup, the tomato paste, and about 200 ml of water. Allow to simmer on medium heat for about 5 minutes. Now add the chicken and mix well. The key is to end up with enough sauce, since the sauce will also be used to season the tayer with. Now when the chicken is half cooked, you add the salted beef and about 200 ml of water. Give it a good stir, and allow it to cook on medium heat for about 15 to 20 minutes. Now allow the meat to cool for about half an hour before you use it in your tayer. Next, you will butter your oven dish like so, and then you will start to layer the tayer and the meat. You start with a reasonable layer of tayer, followed by a generous amount of the meat. You then cover the meat with the second layer of tayer, and before you bake this in the oven, you sprinkle some of the sauce of the meat on the tayer. Next, you will add some butter on top to ensure a nice and soft crust. Now mind you, the crust should never be crispy. It should be moist and soft. Now bake this in a preheated oven for about an hour at 180 degrees C. After that, allow to bake for another half an hour at 120 degrees C, upon which you check with a skewer if the pumice cooked thoroughly. If the skewer comes back clean, your pom is ready. Now allow your pom to cool down completely before serving with rice, some string beans, and some tomato gravy. And that concludes another episode of Food and the Single Guy. Thank you for joining me, and hopefully you'll join me again next time. Have a good one.